So you've started making money, and your life is improving. First, the results are showing. Then listen carefully to what I'm going to tell you. Don't tell anyone. And I know, the urge is huge. You want to tell your friends, you want to tell your family, you want to post it directly, you want to show your progress, you want to prove you succeeded. But this is where most people destroy their own growth. The Stoics already knew this. Theocracy said something powerful. The less people know about you, the more control you will have. And control is power. But let me explain what nobody talks about. When you start to grow, two things happen at the same time. You get excited. The world starts watching you. And not every gaze is neutral. Machiavelli already taught that the biggest mistake of those who rise is thinking that everyone is happy about their ascension. They aren't. Some are, but many aren't. Because money isn't just money. Money is a change in hierarchy. And when you start to rise, you alter the invisible position you occupied in the group anew. That friend who always earned more than you now doesn't earn as much. That cousin who always treated you like you hadn't won yet is starting to look at you differently. That circle where you were the weakest is starting to feel uncomfortable. Do you understand what's happening? You haven't just changed your income. You've changed your social standing. And that affects people's egos. The Stoic understands one fundamental thing. Peace is more important than applause. If you announce your victory too early, you buy yourself 3 problems silent. Envy, others, expectations, unnecessary pressure. And let me be direct with you. Most sabotage doesn't come from declared enemies. It comes from people close to you, often disguised as seemingly helpful advice, genuine concern, or even cautious warnings about potential risks or failure. See? When you talk too much about what you're building, you give away the map. And Machiavelli was brutal about this. Never reveal your intentions before the right time, because when people know what you're doing, they start to react. Some will try to compete. Others will try to get close out of self-interest. Others will hope you fail just to restore the old balance. The Stoic man doesn't move for validation. He moves for strategy. He understands that energy is limited, and every conversation about money is an emotional drain. You start justifying decisions, you start explaining investments, you start proving that you haven't changed, you start trying to appear humble, and without realizing it, you start adapting to the discomfort of others. This is where growth stalls, because growth requires silence. Look at nature. The tree grows in silence. The lion hunts in silence. The strategist plans in silence, but the weak announce before consolidating. And there's something even deeper. When you talk about gains before consolidating discipline, you activate the ego, and the ego relaxes. That's why so many people who start making money stop, post too much, talk too much, show off too much, and lose focus. The Stoic man doesn't celebrate before consolidation. He internalizes it. He thinks, this is just the beginning. I'm still building. Initial money is fragile. Initial fame is fragile. Initial results are fragile. And any premature exposure creates external pressure. Pressure generates anxiety. Anxiety generates mistake. Mistakes generate failure. And when you fall after announcing victory, the fall hurts twice as much. That's why the intelligent man learns the art of strategic silence. He improves his life discreetly. He changes his car without fanfare. He invests without announcing it. He grows without explaining. And when they realize it, he's already years ahead. This isn't coldness. It's psychological maturity. Now pay attention to this, because here begins the part that almost no one dares to talk about. When you start making money, you activate something primitive in people. It's not rational. It's instinctive. Human beings measure social value all the time. Who has more resources? Who has more status? Who has more influence? And money is one of the biggest markers of this. You can be humble, you can not change your ways, you can continue treating everyone the same, but perception changes, and perception is more powerful than intention. Niccolo Machiavelli wrote something extremely realistic. Men forget the death of their father more easily than the loss of their patrimony. Look at the weight of that. People endure tragedies, but they cannot endure losing position. When you start earning more, you threaten positions, and even if no one says anything, a silent war begins. I'll show you how it works. First stage, disguised mockery. Rich now? Yeah. Don't forget your friends. Be careful not to lose everything. It seems like a joke, but it's a test. They are measuring your reaction. Second stage, comparison. So-and-so also tried this and went broke. That's just a phase. It'll go back to normal soon. They need to believe that your rise is temporary, because if it isn't, it means they've been left behind. Third stage, silent distancing. This is where it gets dangerous. People start to distance themselves. Others start to get too close. Interest, dependence, expectation. You start to become the financial reference point of the group. And then come requests, unmissable investments, financial help, poorly thought out partnerships, emotional favors. And all this starts because you talked too much. The historian understands something brutal. Not everyone can stand to see you evolve. The author warned that we must choose with extreme care who has access to our intimacy. And money is intimacy. Because money reveals the power of choice, reveals freedom, reveals independence, and independence is unsettling. There's a psychological phenomenon called social equilibrium. People feel comfortable when everyone is on the same level. When someone rises, the group tries to pull them back down, not out of conscious malice, but out of emotional need. It's almost automatic. And here comes the Machiavellian side of things. You don't need to hate anyone, but you need to understand the game. If you announce your earnings too early, you become a target. A target of envy, a target of expectation, a target of judgment. And worse, you start spending energy defending yourself, answering questions, explaining yourself, justifying choices. And every time you over-explain, you lose authority. The strategic man speaks little, shows even less, and lets the results speak for themselves when they are already undeniable. There's something else nobody tells you. When you say you're making money, you create pressure to continue earning at the same rate. Now you don't just want to grow, you want to maintain the image you've created, and that generates anxiety. You start making decisions to maintain appearances. You start spending to maintain the narrative. You start taking risks so you don't seem to have regressed. And there you have it. The trap is set. Most financial setbacks don't happen due to a lack of ability, but due to premature exposure, ego, and the need for validation. Stoicism teaches inner mastery. Machiavelli teaches outer mastery. And when you combine the two, you understand something essential. You don't need others to know. You need to consolidate. You don't need to prove. You need to structure. You don't need to impress. You need to accumulate. There's a huge difference between appearing prosperous and being structurally strong. The first seeks applause. The second builds empires in silence. And let me ask you a sincere question. If everything went wrong tomorrow, who among the people you counted on would be there to hold the fort? Very few. But many would be ready to comment. That's why financial growth requires discretion. It's not paranoia. It's a psychological strategy. There's something extremely powerful in not being fully deciphered. And when the subject is money, and that multiplies. When nobody knows exactly how much you earn, how much you have saved, or what your next move is, you create a field of mystery around you. And mystery generates respect. Mystery generates caution. Mystery generates curiosity. The predictable man is easy to read. The overly transparent man is easy to manipulate. The man who reveals everything loses his advantage. Niccolo Machiavelli defended something essential in the game of power. Men judge more by their eyes than by their hands. In other words, people live by perception. And when you control perception, you control the game. If you expose your earnings, you provide parameters. Now they know your standard of living. They know your capacity. They know your limits. And when they know your limits, they know how far they can push you. But when they don't know, they hesitate. And hesitation is power. Think about it with me. If nobody knows how much you have invested, nobody knows how much you can grow. If nobody knows your reserves, nobody knows how much you can withstand a crisis. If nobody knows your strategy, nobody can predict your next step. The Stoic understands the value of self-control. Marcus Aurelius wrote to himself about inner discipline, not outward display. He was emperor. He had absolute power, but his writings were private. Why? Because true strength doesn't need an audience. Now let me show you something psychological. When you don't talk about money, you force people to read you through behavior, not numbers. And behavior is harder to measure. You can live simply and have millions. You can invest heavily and no one will suspect it. You can be building something great while everyone thinks you're just average. This gives you freedom. Freedom to make mistakes without judgment. Freedom to test ideas without opposition. Freedom to grow without external pressure. And there's more. Financial silence creates something I call invisible authority. You begin to be perceived as someone stable, someone reserved, someone difficult to access, and people value what they don't fully understand. Too much information takes away the charm. That's why those who talk too much about earnings lose magnetism. They become statistics, numbers, targets for comparison. But those who maintain discretion become enigmas, and enigmas command respect. Now pay attention to this. When you talk about money, you enter the validation game. When you don't talk, you enter the strategy game. The first is emotional, the second is rational, and money demands cold rationality. There's a curious pattern. Those who truly accumulate significant wealth speak little. Those who are starting out and want to prove something speak a lot, because they're still seeking recognition. The Stoic doesn't seek recognition. He seeks inner mastery. He thinks long-term. He knows that wealth is achieved in invisible layers. First structure, then expansion. Only at the end, recognition, if still necessary. And there's an even deeper point. When nobody knows exactly your financial level, you're never fully categorized. They don't completely underestimate you, but they also can't fully label you. You become an unstable variable, and unstable variables are difficult to attack. People attack what they understand, what they can measure, what they can compare, but what is uncertain generates caution, and caution generates respect. Now let me challenge you. Do you want to appear prosperous? Or do you want to be strategically powerful? Because they are different things. Most want to appear so. Few choose to be. And that's why few people truly accumulate wealth. In the beginning, you're focused, disciplined, discreet, and hungry. You work quietly, but then the money starts coming in. First results. First victories. The first feeling of, I did it. And it's exactly here that the ego starts whispering, "You deserve to show it." Now you can. Let them see. And when you listen to that voice, the game changes. Seneca warned that the greatest danger of initial success is the false sense of security, because small success creates overconfidence, and excessive confidence breeds carelessness. I'll explain the psychological mechanism of this. When you announce that you've started making money, you create a public identity. Now you're not just you are what's working and maintaining. A public identity requires energy. You start acting to sustain the image, you start spending to maintain the standard. You start making decisions thinking about what others will think. Do you see the trap? Before, you work to grow. Now you work to maintain your reputation. And reputation is fragile. Just one bad month, one investment that goes wrong, one miscalculation, and the psychological pressure doubles. Because now you don't just want to recover the money, you want to avoid looking like you've fallen. That's when many take unnecessary risks, get into businesses they don't understand, lend money out of pride, invest to impress, buy to prove themselves. Rumes. And what started as growth turns into instability. Niccolo Machiavelli spoke about something crucial. The prudent ruler must avoid being hated and despised. And do you know when you start to be despised? When your image grows faster than your structure, when you appear to have more than you can sustain. Contempt isn't only from falling, but from incoherence. And the ego loves inconsistency. It loves to anticipate victory, loves premature applause, loves attention. But money doesn't respect ego. Money respects discipline, and discipline is silent. There's another even deeper point. When you say you're making money, you activate constant comparison. Now people will observe your car, your clothes, your restaurant, your trip. Any inconsistency becomes a comment. Wait, but weren't you earning well? You start living under social scrutiny, even if nobody says anything to your face, and that wears you down. The Stoic seeks inner freedom. Inner freedom demands not depending on external approval. If you need others to know what you're earning, you're still trapped. Trapped in validation, trapped in recognition, trapped in the gaze of others. The strategic man understands that true growth is cumulative and invisible at the beginning. He's not in a hurry to be recognized. He's in a hurry to structure. And let me tell you something harsh. Most people don't lose money because of a lack of intelligence. They lose it because their behavior changes when they start earning. They become relaxed. They become showy. They become emotional. And money doesn't tolerate emotionality. There's a brutal difference between earning money and knowing how to keep it. Earning is skill. Keeping it is character. And character is built in silence. There's a brutal difference between those who get rich in a phase and those who build permanent power. The difference isn't just in intelligence. It isn't just in opportunity, nor in luck. It's in the ability to maintain silence while growing. The money that truly changes your life isn't the first one that comes in. It's the one you manage to protect. And protection requires discretion. The average man thinks like this. When I start earning well, everyone will know. The strategic man thinks differently. When I'm truly strong, no one will have noticed the path. Do you see the contrast? One wants recognition, the other wants advantage. Marcus Aurelius ruled the largest empire of his time and wrote reminders to himself about self-control, humility, and discipline. He understood something that few people understand today. Real power doesn't need an audience. He already had respect, authority, and dominance, but his concern was maintaining a stable mind, because stability is what sustains wealth. Now let me show you what financial silence does in the long run. First, It reduces noise, without people giving opinions, without unnecessary advice, without social pressure, without constant comparison. You think better, decide better, invest better. Second, it increases your margin of error. If no one knows how much you have, no one notices small stumbles. You can adjust your strategy without judgment. You can make small mistakes. You can test. You can recalculate your route. If you brag about your wins, you forfeit that luxury. Any fluctuation becomes a topic of conversation. Third, it preserves relationships. Revealed money alters dynamics. Some people start to see you as a resource, others as a threat, others as competition. When you maintain discretion, relationships remain based on essence, not bank balance, and this protects your peace. Zaki used to say that true wealth is that which does not enslave the soul. If you need to show off to feel validated, you've become a slave to your own achievement. But if you accumulate in silence, you become emotionally independent. And emotional independence is the highest level of power. Now comes the Machiavellian part of this. When no one knows exactly your financial reach, you negotiate better. You don't seem desperate, you don't seem dependent, you don't seem pressured. You move calmly and quietly. You intimidate. Those who need to prove something speak loudly. Those who have structure speak softly. And that's what few understand. Silence is not weakness. It's shielding. It's strategy. It's narrative control. You choose when to reveal. You choose to whom to reveal. You choose how much to reveal. And while you do that, you accumulate, reinvest, strengthen, build assets, build reserves. You build freedom, silently, privately, without opposition. Now I want you to remember this. Your first money is a seed. If you expose the seed before the root takes hold, any wind will uproot it. But if you protect it, if you water it silently, when the tree is big, no one will be able to cut it down. The mistake most people make is confusing progress with spectacle, but real progress is silent, almost invisible at the beginning, and only becomes visible when it's already consolidated. So if you've just started making money, don't tell, don't post, don't explain, don't provoke, build, increase, strengthen, and let time reveal only what is inevitable. Because in the end, true power isn't in showing that you've won, it's in knowing that you can continue winning even if no one is watching. I met two guys a few years ago. They both started practically from scratch. Same age, same city, same will to win. They both started making money around the same time, but they made different decisions. The first one started posting everything. Screenshots of earnings, photos in expensive restaurants, indirect phrases about those who doubted him, a visible change in his lifestyle. He wanted to show that he was winning. And in the beginning, it worked. Likes increased, messages started arriving, invitations appeared, compliments. But along with that came other things, requests for money, poorly explained partnerships, pressure to invest in things he didn't even understand, expectations of maintaining a certain standard of living. And you know what happened? A bad month turned into despair. A wrong investment turned into panic. He started taking excessive risks to avoid looking like he was falling. 2 years later, almost everything he earned had evaporated. But the worst part wasn't the money. It was the psychological impact, the shame, the forced silence, the disappearance. Now let me tell you about the second guy. He didn't post anything, didn't comment with almost anyone, continued living simply, continued studying, continued investing. When asked, he answered vaguely, "How's it going?" "I'm working, building," without numbers, without details, without explanation. While the other was busy maintaining an image, he was building structure, reserves, assets, strategic relationships. 5 years later, few people knew the true size of what he had, but those who needed to know did. And he didn't need to prove anything. He negotiated calmly, invested safely, slept peacefully. Now I ask you, which of the two do you want to be? The one who announces before consolidating, or the one who consolidates before announcing? Niccolo Machiavelli said that the prudent man should build his fortress before the war begins, and his financial fortress begins in silence. Seneca reminded us that the wise man works more with himself than with the opinions of others. And that's what's at stake here. It's not just money. It's mastery. It's emotional control. It's long-term strategy. If you've just started making money, protect it. If you haven't started yet, prepare yourself in silence. And if you want to learn to think like few others do, if you want to develop this strategic, cold, disciplined mindset, I've left something important in the pinned link in the comments. It's a next step. It's deeper than this video, but it only makes sense to those who understand that growing isn't about showing up. It's about building. Click on the pinned link, but click with the right mindset. Not to look for shortcuts, not to seek hype, but to learn to play the game strategically. Because the world rewards those who know how to act, but protects those who know how to remain silent. And now the decision is yours. Will you announce your seed, or will you protect it until it becomes an empire?